Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hello and welcome. Today, I would like to introduce you to Monty Meyers, aka the Monty Man, founder and executive producer of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting and the Take 12 Recovery radio shows. He's an addiction peer support specialist and a certified recovery mentor. He has over 30 years of experience working on pastoral staffs of local congregations and drug and alcohol services. Monty's work is for people who have a desire to become whole through the recovery process. So welcome, Monty.
Well, thank you so much, Donna, for inviting me on your podcast. That means a great deal.
Yeah, well, ditto. I really appreciate you coming on. So first thing I always ask, what would you like to share without shame?
All right. And I was prepared for that question, and here it is in a nutshell. Look, I came from a background that wasn't real pleasant, like many of us. Although I will tell you that my mother and my father did the very best they could. Nobody raised me on the toilet seat backwards or any of that kind of stuff. But some things happened to me very early on in middle school or junior high school that kind of drove me into wanting to cover the pain of the embarrassment and the shame that took place due to some abuse that was going on there by older boys. And from that point all the way until today, I will tell you that it does matter what has happened to you. If you're listening, it does matter. But let me tell you what doesn't matter. What doesn't matter is those voices that are telling you that you cannot survive this. That is a lie from the pits of hell. That is shame-based, and you don't need to live there. When I work with people in the 12-step world, and we get to their 4-step and their inventory and so forth. When it comes to abuse, at no matter what age, no matter if a person was under the influence, maybe they made some poor choices and they got too drunk, but it still doesn't matter. It's not your fault. That is not for you to carry. That's the one piece of inventory that's not on you. And so I just want to share with people the shame that comes with that is intense, and it takes good therapy. But I am telling you that there is freedom from it. You can survive it, and you can be free of it.
And I think too, I'm a big supporter for inner child work because a lot of people. It started, something happened in their childhood. And I know my son, he was bullied in 6th grade because when I found out he was using, it's like, what happened? Are you gay? Because if you are, that's okay. Did somebody hurt you? Were you molested? What happened?
Yeah.
And he kept saying, no. And then later we found out in 6th grade he was bullied. And that was kind of the demise. And then it became, I want to fit in with the cool kids.
Yeah.
But I think it all goes back, whether you have a substance use disorder or not,
right?
That we all have a child who's been hurt by either a teacher or a classmate or a family member. There's always something, right? And whether you're little or adolescent or teenager, it follows us. It's like we have this cart and it's full with all our stuff. And it keeps piling on. And we keep dragging it through life until we get to a point where we hit enough and we start unpacking it.
Yeah. Amen to that. So, and I'm not necessarily a subscriber to every single thing has to do with deep-seated trauma. I think that ends up being a buzzword sometimes, like things. But just because something turns into a buzzword doesn't mean it's not accurate in many instances. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So, trauma it's really interesting because your trauma may be that you were never hugged. My trauma maybe I was hugged too much. Subjective, and we really need to be very sensitive to that when working with people. And so, sometimes it's just life happening. The deal of it is life happening can be traumatic. And I mean, junior high and high school, that's always been traumatic. I mean,
that's years.
A traumatic experience, even for the most healthiest of child, right? It's traumatic for the education system. It's traumatic for those who are under the education system. So if you've survived that, it's no joke. Congratulations. But yeah, I mean, so we, in my life, I did everything I could to mask the feelings of shame, because shame is such a huge destructive thing. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew that when I put a substance in my body, it changed the way I felt, and then I didn't feel these things until it turned on me. So, narcotics and alcohol, of course, it started with alcohol, but narcotics and alcohol weren't my problem, Donna. They were my solution, and then when they became my friend and then they turned on me, that was very hurtful because I had to go through a grieving process of losing them.
Right.
But yeah, and I just want to congratulate you. What you're doing, what we all are doing that are in media, with podcasts and YouTube channels and all that. I think it is way overdue, and I love the video anonymous people. We're coming out of the shadows and we're saying, hey, let me tell you something. I am going to speak up. Anonymity does not mean secrecy. It does not.
Yeah.
And we need to speak up, and we need to do these things like these shows.
Yeah. Well, I know Greg Williams, and we had him come up to New Hampshire and put on an event where we showed the anonymous people many years ago. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And now he's in Washington doing all kinds of great stuff.
Right. Yeah, we, and that's one of the best kept secrets out there, even within the recovery community, is we do have a lot of advocates on Capitol Hill. We do have a lot of people that are overturning some of the stones, and they don't get a lot of press, but it is going on. It is going on. Up here in Oregon, we have a thing called Oregon Recovers, and it's huge. They have jogging events, walks and runs, and picnics, and they're on the steps of the Capitol building all the time. Yeah, so I mean, there is a lot of stuff going on. You just got to dig for it, look for it, and get on board. Yeah,
we have an organization called New Futures, and I've never done a protest before, but we did a protest, and I think I was like in my late 50s at the time, and I would have been horrified had I got arrested. But we were at the State House and lying on the pavement and letting the Congress people and the senators like step over us because I forget what it was about. But
wow,
I mean, and my shame kept me in the house because I didn't want anybody to know that I loved somebody in active addiction, and until I got to a point, and it took me years. When I hit my enough, and then I started asking for people, I was knocking on doors going, hey, I want to make a difference. How do I do that? Well, I'm just the mother. So it was like, they weren't interested in me, and nothing worse than a pissed off mother. We're going to make things happen.
That's good. Well, this whole thing with Take 12 Recovery Radio, can I share how this thing started?
Absolutely. I was going to get to that, but go ahead.
It's so interesting because it started out of a resentment. It wasn't mine. Somebody else had it. I was at a 12-step support meeting, and I was quoting some of the literature. I was asked to share and made this quote, and it goes like this: that tired old lie, once an addict, always an addict, will no longer be tolerated by society or the addict himself. The lie is dead. We do recover. So that's a quote from this particular fellowship's literature. Well, this gentleman stood up and interrupted and said, "Hey, Monty, you know what? If you want to spout your opinions, why don't you start your own talk show and leave the rest of us alone?" Well, you tell somebody like you and I something like that, then we're going to go ahead and do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what happened was I had no idea how to do that. I thought it was kind of ludicrous. The guy that was challenging me didn't even know his own literature, and yet he did that. But I went home that day, and when I got home, there was a message on my answering machine. Remember the answering machines that had the little cassette tapes in them? We're dating ourselves now, right?
Yep, absolutely.
That thing was going off in my machine, and it was a gal from Nashville who was a music agent, and she said, "I have a client who read one of your emails that you sent to one of your sponsees." I had no idea how that happened. "She doesn't like your opinions about things, but she thinks it would make a great talk show. Here's her number. Will you call her?" And I never did get a hold of that gal. Her name was Mary Lynn B. She was a recovery recording artist back before anybody knew about recovery music. And I never did talk to her, but through a chain of events, I was put in touch with a guy named Tom Sumner in Virginia Beach. And this is back when you had to write code to build a website.
Mm-hmm.
So he did all that for me. And we put together, it wasn't even called a podcast. It was just an MP3 file, and 20 years ago. And we did a show on a Friday. And then my manic self took over, and we ended up doing a show every day of the week. And so I learned to balance. and now we do 3 shows a week.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that for a long time. But we started making contacts with these recovery recording artists and found out that there was a whole bunch of people, but they had no idea how to get their music out there. And I didn't know anything about that either, but one thing turned into another. And pretty soon I started getting personal phone numbers from people that were very, very famous. I still to this day don't remember how that happened, but one of the guys that I got in touch with was the co-founder of Woodstock, Artie Kornfeld. And he's a big recovery guy. And he ended up on my show, like I mentioned earlier. Peter Tork was on my show.
Yeah.
Kennedy Lawford, before he passed away, was on. There's a whole host of people. And before you know it, we got 20 years of these broadcasts. We're not the biggest. We're not the most popular. But we kind of like to think that we were the pioneers, and, we're all on the same side. So I am very much in favor of helping other people get their podcast going and get moving. And it's an exciting thing to be part of. It really, really is. But we haven't been without our criticism, let me tell you. We've had the tradition police on our back a few times.
Oh, boy.
But we're not affiliated. So I say it's a moot point, guys. I never say what 12-step fellowship I'm a member of. I never say that. People can guess, but I honor that. And so we're doing a thing right now. We're hooking up with an organization called Came to Believe Recovery, and they do these amazing workshops. They've been doing them for years. I didn't even know they were out there, where they take people through the steps in 3 days, like they did back in the days of the founders, with the exception of step 9, the immense step. And they put on these retreats, and people's lives are changed. So we're partnering up with them to produce a podcast for them on our station. And it's just exciting stuff. There's a lot of great stuff going on when it comes to media and recovery.
And isn't that what Charlie and Joe used to do? Didn't they used to do weekends?
Yep.
They would take people through the steps.
Sure did. Sure.
Yeah, and they, I don't know how I ended up with those tapes. My husband and I don't have a substance use disorder, but somehow we ended up with those tapes, and we would just go for rides and listen to Charlie and Joe do that weekend Big Book information, and we couldn't get enough of it. We loved it because I don't know if you know this about me. I was a nosy, controlling mother. of his son who had a substance use disorder. And 3 years into his recovery, he said, Mom, I'm going to do the 12 steps. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, I'm going to work with this older guy. I said, well, how old is he? And he said, yeah, he's about you and Dad's age, maybe older. And I'm thinking, what would this guy want to be around my baby boy for, who's now 28?
Yeah.
And so I found this woman who she was an Al-Anon, but she did the steps through Alcoholics Anonymous, through a friend who ran a group, and his wife took her through. And she sponsored me and took me through, because when my son was doing it, I wanted to make sure it was okay. And I will tell you, it was the greatest gift I ever gave myself.
That's wonderful.
Going through the steps. And I think everybody should do the steps.
Everybody. One of the challenges that I've come across is I'm a member of the faith community. I'm a born-again, Bible-thumping Christian guy. But I have found that people in the faith community have had an issue with the 12-step community, and people in the 12-step community have had an issue with the faith community. And I'm like, stop it, you guys. You guys, other than this semantics problem that you have with each other, you're on the same side. You need to, drop the sword, so to speak, and let's get on the same page here. So we've been blessed with being able to go to some church events and some seminars and be able to share and clear up some of the misconceptions of the 12 steps. Because unfortunately, some of the 12-step fellowships have done kind of a poor job of representing themselves properly as of the last 15, 20 years. And so we need to kind of heal that. There's a big misunderstanding about things like God as I understand him and what that really means. And, is a 12-step movement, is it a cult? You hear all sorts of stuff, right? Yeah. I had one pastor say to me, all you need is one step. That's all you need. Just need to turn your life over to God. I go, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the start there. But if you got a problem with the numbers next to the spiritual disciplines, take the numbers away.
Right.
And just do the spiritual disciplines, and you'll find that there's no conflict biblically with them at all. Mm-hmm. And once some leadership in churches start to understand that, then they're more open to doing things like having Celebrate Recovery come in, or Alcoholics for Christ come in, or even an AA meeting or an NA meeting, rent their convention hall or whatever. And then the 12-steppers need to chill out too. And, we don't talk about God in here. Well, then you better close the literature, because he's all over the place.
Right. Right.
So
it's a God of your understanding, correct?
Yeah. Well, here's the misconception. You don't create God out of your understanding, because then if you did that, you become the creator. And now we're back to the problem. If the problem is our thinking, we can't solve the problem with the problem. So we don't create God out of our own understanding. We turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we continue in our understanding of him. So any place is good enough to make a beginning, provided it makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. But the whole purpose of the 12-step process is to move on from there, to develop a relationship with the divine. And so it's a continual, as I'm understanding him. It's like I'm deciding on what soda I'm going to drink as I walk to 7-Eleven. So it's a movement. It's an action step. We are always evolving in our understanding of the Creator, and how that shows up in a person's personal life. It's never going to be exactly the same for even people of the same faith. It's going to be very personal, but it ought never be private, And so, my story was I needed to learn about my physical medical condition called alcoholism. Mm-hmm. So I learned about alcoholism by reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then I needed to develop a relationship with my Creator. So I learned that by reading the Bible. And so then I put them both together, and I have this most wonderful, beautiful thing. It's the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to me, Donna. And so when people ask me, I'm able to share that with them. But, I had somebody ask me, so do you sponsor people that aren't, believers in the same God as you are? Absolutely. Absolutely. My job is to share whatever fellowship that I'm sponsoring in, to share the directives in that fellowship. It's God's job to make himself real to them in a personal way, not my job.
All right. So for people who don't know anything about the Big Book, I know when I used to run family support groups and I used to talk about the Big Book, people thought it was like this enormous book.
Yeah, I know.
And can you explain what the Big Book is and what the 12 steps are for people who aren't that don't have alcoholism, and they might be a parent who's new to all of this and their children are now starting to talk about step work?
Right. Well, years ago, there was a fellowship called the Oxford Group, which it was a temperance program, primarily alcoholics, where they got together and supported each other, and they signed temperance pledges that said, I promise never to drink again on this date, blah, 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 blah. Well, we knew little about alcoholism or addiction as far as that goes back then. We very quickly learned that signing a temperance pledge wasn't the solution, because people were drinking shortly afterwards. It didn't mean they didn't mean it, though. So how do you take somebody who absolutely means it with all their heart and all their being to never pick up again, and yet they do? Well, that's when we started discovering things like why we're powerless over a substance and that kind of thing. Well, for those who don't understand what the Big Book is, it's actually called Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the name of the book. Its nickname is the Big Book. And so it was written in the early 1930s. Bill Wilson, the co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, his co-founder was Dr. Bob Smith, put these directives together. In fact, when it comes to the 12 steps, he said that he knew he needed to put a program of depth and weight in print. So he sought the Creator in doing so. And as he talks about this, his hand just began to kind of move across the page, and the steps were formed. And then the different chapters that are in there, the investigation of the disease of alcoholism and the doctor's opinion. So we have the doctor's opinion in there. We have chapters called More About Alcoholism. How it works is how the program of Alcoholics Anonymous works. The family afterwards, Two Wives, which, by the way, was not written by Lois, Bill's wife, but written by Bill. Really pissed off Lois, but he did that. And so you have this book with stories in the back. So you have directives on how to work the 12 steps in a way that is pretty simple. And then you have stories in the back of alcoholics who recovered from alcoholism as a result, a spiritual awakening that took place as a result of the steps. And that's pretty much what the Big Book is. The other literature, like the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, is kind of like a commentary on that stuff. It's not really the direct directions on how to work the steps. And so the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's been 4 editions of that thing printed, and what's primarily changed are the stories in the back. They keep adding different stories in the back of the book. Along came Narcotics Anonymous, and people that were dealing with narcotic issues, from permission from Alcoholics Anonymous, adapted the 12 Steps of Narcotics Anonymous. And there really wasn't any change in the steps other than the wording of alcoholism versus narcotic addiction. But it's the same steps, So that's what it is. It's a basic text. It's a textbook to guide people in AA through the step process. In NA, it's called the basic text of NA, and it does the same thing. Now, many other organizations, offshoots, have used the 12 steps by permission of Alcoholics Anonymous World Service Office to rewrite the steps to fit their program. Al-Anon uses them, of course, and a lot of, I think we have over 300 different 12-step programs out there today, all using the basics of the 12 steps as their program.
Yeah, I used to run an All Addictions Big Book Step Study meeting with my sponsor,
Oh yeah.
and which was interesting. I mean, it opened a world that I was never aware of. But
Yeah.
I remember there were two women. One was, I think hers was food addiction, and the other one was a gamer. And this one woman, she was just an angry woman, and she just hated the use of the name God
Uh-huh.
and refused read anything from the book. So they decided to rewrite the big book and, and take it. I don't know whatever happened. I know they worked on it for a long time,
Yeah.
you know, and it was one of the nights. It wasn't my night to facilitate, and when I walked in, I see this little nun. She was probably 5 feet tall, in full habit, and she's in the guest chair, and I'm beside myself. What's she doing? A nun? Are you kidding me?
Right. Right.
And then as the meeting opened up, she was the guest speaker and was talking about her alcoholism, and she
Sure.
swore. She said a swear word. I grew up in the Catholic church, and I used to go to, see, what do you call it?
Mass.
No, classes on
Oh,
Saturday mornings.
confirmation
We had to
class.
go
Yeah.
to, classes with the nuns, and they were, in my eyes, they were always perfect. And here's this woman who is in full
Sure.
habit, talking about her alcoholism.
Sure.
Blew me away. I just didn't
Yeah.
think it happened to people like her.
Yeah. Alcoholism, addiction, codependency, which is just people addiction, right? Food, eating disorders, whatever it is, it's no respecter of people. It isn't. It's people are people, and it doesn't matter what your profession is, what your belief system is, what your political viewpoints are. If you got it, you got it. One thing that's amazing that we've learned about alcoholism, not necessarily narcotic addiction, but alcoholism, is it's genetic. You either have it or you don't. You don't develop alcoholism from abusing alcohol. You may do stupid drunk stuff. You may end up with a DUI. You may end up alienating your family. But that doesn't make you an alcoholic. What makes you an alcoholic isn't so much what happens when you drink, but what happens when you're sober. What's your thinking like when you're sober? My thinking was, when I'm stone cold sober, how can I get another drink without consequences? Now I'm thinking that way, stone cold sober. Alcohol abusers or non-alcoholics are temperate drinkers. They don't think like that.
No.
Wouldn't ever cross their mind. That's an alcoholic thinking.
Right.
Now, narcotic addiction, you can develop narcotic addiction from abuse, and very, very quickly. I mean, we know that. The chemical dependency that happens it can be almost immediate, especially with opiate-based pain medications and so forth.
Right, because it changes the brain chemistry.
You betcha. You betcha. And so medically, there may be some different ways of dealing with those. But you know what? And this is the thing that still people are having a hard time getting a grip on. Whether it's the bottle, whether it's the needle, whether it's the person, whether it's the food or the pornography, those are symptoms. Those are outward manifestations of an inward condition. The inward condition is always the same, no matter what the problem is. And that's that we have a God-shaped hole and we're trying to fill it with everything else but. And until we have a spiritual experience and a spirit, not just an experience, but a spiritual awakening, and if we're truly addicts and codependents, and in other words, we're truly powerless over whatever it is that's got us, until we have a spiritual awakening, we won't recover. But once we do, we can and do recover. And people say, well, Monty, you can't say that you're recovered. Oh, yes, I can. It doesn't mean cured.
And that's the difference. Yeah. You're not cured, but you're in recovery.
Yeah. I mean, we recover from stuff all the time, right? We recover from food poisoning, right? If I get food poisoning, I don't stop going out to eat. I may use some wisdom on that restaurant if it happens more than once. But like the guy's got the peanut allergy, right? He eats peanuts and he swells up and he can't breathe and he goes to the hospital and they stick him with an EpiPen. And while he's in the hospital, he's in recovery. Once the swelling's gone down, his breathing's back to normal, they sign him out and they go home. He has recovered. Is he still allergic to peanuts?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, he's allergic to peanuts. That doesn't go away. But he's recovered from that incident, right? So I'm a recovered alcoholic, but I'm still an alcoholic. You know, I'm still very much an addict. I have an addictive personality. Just ask my wife. When I jump into something, I tend to go overboard. Case in point, the show's doing a show every day of the week. That was crazy.
So it's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing, right? So I need people in my life to come around and say, hey, slow your roll here, buddy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and I think we kind of, within the recovery community, we have this thing where we want to take people from keep it simple to keep them sick. Wait a minute. There's a solution. In fact, there's a chapter in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous called There Is a Solution, but there is a solution to the addiction problem. There is a solution to the alcohol problem and the codependency problem, and it's spiritual in nature. Mm-hmm. It's medical. It's like I tell people, you've got a medical condition with a spiritual solution. And when you bring those two together, you have marvelous things that happen. Mm-hmm. Just watch. Just watch. But God won't render us white as snow without our cooperation.
Say that again.
God will not render us white as snow without our cooperation. We must cooperate. It's like the people that are taking Ozempic, right? I have a good friend who's on Ozempic by a doctor's directives. He needs to be on there. And he told me, he says, you have to cooperate with the medication. It makes me not want to eat, but I have to eat. So you can't not eat. You have to cooperate with it, right? Right. So that's the case with any solution. But this whole idea that we're going to walk around for the rest of our lives scared to death to go to the grocery store because there's beer there. That's ludicrous. You gotta live in the world. I can go to a wedding and people can be drinking too much. I can pay my respects and I can leave, and I'm not affected by that. Yeah. It doesn't have that power over me anymore because I've tapped into a power greater than myself. Left to my own devices, forget it. I'm at tap, baby.
And I think whether, you have a substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder, or you're the loved one, parent, the other person, we mimic each other's behaviors.
Oh, yeah.
If you've ever noticed that, but we mimic each other's behaviors. I do a thing, one of my workshops on the drama triangle, and how, when I came into this world, I came in as my son's rescuer. Let me do it. I can do this. I can do it better than you. So let mommy handle it all. Yeah. Right? And then when that didn't work, then I would be the victim, feeling sorry for myself. I'd go to bed in the fetal position. And then when I was sick of being sick, then I became the persecutor. You SOB. How dare you do this to your father and I? We've given you a good life, blah, 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 blah. And when I couldn't bring him to his knees and then build him back up, I would rescue him. And I lived in this triangle for many years. I found my son had the same drama triangle. He would try to get sober. He'd be up in his room detoxing. I think he has the flu.
Yeah, right.
He'd be the victim. If there was a God, this wouldn't be happening to me. If you bought me designer clothes in 6th grade, I would have been bullied. And then who does he persecute? Me. I'm his chief enabler. Yeah. And he lived in that triangle. And here we are, just a mess. And we don't even know we're in this mess. Yeah. Until it's like a hula hoop. You have a hula hoop. I'm in the center of it, being the unhealthy helper. I have all this stuff hanging off, his addiction, hanging off dealers, whatever. It took me years to figure out I was the one trying to keep everything, his addiction, balanced, right? And all I had to do was stop and drop. let the hula hoop fall down, step outside the circle and start and maybe pick up one thing at a time and start working on me. Because I couldn't control his disease, his actions, what came out of his mouth, whatever. I couldn't control it. As a mom that took her job very seriously, it took me many, many years to do that. But I had to hit my enough. Just like when my son hit his enough and he decided, or not that it was he had a spiritual awakening. I've talked about it before, where he talked to his addicted self and his newly sober self.
Wow.
And he told me, he goes, Mom, I felt a negative energy leave my body that night and I knew I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
I didn't ask anything else because it's not my business. But, you know, I had my own spiritual awakening 2 years prior where I hit my enough. I saw this emotional scale. I found out that I was severely depressed. I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I had a broken heart. There is broken heart syndrome.
Yes,
and all this stuff going on. And when I hit my enough, I was able to start my healing process too. And that's why I say we mimic each other's behaviors, whether you have an SUD or not. We all get a little crazy.
There's been studies out, for instance, looking at the parallels between a workaholic and an alcoholic. And they've done brain scans, and you can almost not tell the difference.
It's an addictive behavior, correct?
Yeah. So a lot of the behaviors that manifest are neglect of the family, you know, for the sake of what? For the sake of providing for the family. And so it's a vicious cycle, you know, but it's amazing. The symptoms are different, but the stuff going on inside is very much the same. You know, my wife, when she comes out of, she was a preacher's kid. I mean, her parents were amazing, very, very functional family. She thought she grew up in a large family, and they lived in Kansas, and you know, and so she's the peacemaker in the family and all that. So when she married me and she started learning about my stuff, she was fit to be tied. This was all new to her. She never had a sip of wine in her life, nothing, right? So she picked up Codependent No More, and she tells the story. She ended up throwing that book across the room more than once. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right, you know.
Right, yeah.
And got a lady coming on my show here next week who's written a book called Co-Crazy. And it's all about, you know, that codependency, about people addiction. You know, somebody told my wife, you are a drug addict. What? Yeah, your drug's just him.
Absolutely.
That's your drug.
Yep.
You know, but when you come out the other side of this thing and you can look back and then you can help other people to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, regardless of what the issue is, what an incredible opportunity and gift to be part of a movement like that, Donna. I mean, because you know, we have our naysayers. It's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
It's all right.
Well, that's what makes the world go round.
That's right. Yeah.
Can't have everybody on board.
A little controversy is healthy.
Yeah. You know, and I know with your wife, my son became my drug of choice. I was addicted to rescuing him. And I really, with every inch of my being, I thought I could love him into recovery.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when I found out that I couldn't, because I'm the mom.
Right.
It was heartbreaking and
you feel like a failure? Do you feel like a failure as a mom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm supposed to fix this. This is my beautiful boy, my firstborn. You know, he's my everything. And I couldn't. And I realized, you know, I mean, we become very, very sick emotionally. And I was so obsessed with him that I thought my marriage was falling apart because my husband, he could go to work and he had zero tolerance. He wasn't an unhealthy helper. So which irritated me. So it was like, get out of the way, go to work, leave me alone. Let me make a mess. But I think I'm fixing everything. And then I have another child who was doing, he was fine. I wasn't paying attention to the healthy people in my life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I became very emotionally ill, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. But I will tell you this. I took a road. I went to Al-Anon, and they pissed me off because because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
When I went, give me the answer to save my son, because I didn't raise my son to be addicted to drugs. We had this talk. We showed him what drugs and alcohol do. We showed him an aunt who was dying of AIDS. We showed him this. He knows better. All this craziness, and no matter what, it happened. And so, but I wouldn't change any of it for anything, because I like who I am today better than who I was when all this began.
That makes me think of there's a quote: we do not regret the past, nor do we wish to shut the door on it. Mm-hmm. Because our experience, right, that is the stuff that's going to help save somebody else.
Well, and you look at the gifts that have come to your life through your program, right? Look who you are today, helping so many people. We have this ability that we can pay it forward. I don't ask for anything in return.
Right.
I have this saying that, and I tell the parents this, if I hope I get it right. A friend of mine told me this, is whatever you give, put it on the table without an expectation, pull your hands back, and don't expect that it will be received or acknowledged, or you'll get a thank you. Just do it because out of love and care. Yeah. And here you go. Do what you will with this.
Yeah.
Right? Because
that's great.
I can't control it. Right. I want to.
Yeah.
But I can't control it. Greatest lesson I learned from going through the steps, and I didn't like this lesson. Nobody has to live up to my expectations.
Oh my gosh. You know what? I don't know if you know Dr. Alan Berger, but Dr. Berger is the author of a book called 12 Stupid Things That Mess Up Recovery. He just came out with a new book called 12 Essential Insights for Emotional Sobriety. Now, Dr. Berger is one of the sponsors of our show, and he's been on my advisory board. And he's a Jewish gentleman that lives, I think he lives in Pennsylvania right now, but he's from Southern California area and has had a practice for many, many years. And he's what I would refer to as the emotional sobriety guru. Now, emotional sobriety is what Bill Wilson said he felt was the next frontier after the steps. AA really never really got to teach that very much before his death. But some people have picked it up. Dr. Berger's one of them. And it basically is what you're talking about is, anybody can put the plug in the jug or pull the needle out for a day, right? But what about being emotionally sober? And what that is emotional dependency is when I'm dependent, and I lived this way for years, when I'm dependent on you fulfilling my expectation on how you should act, feel, and believe, and how you should treat me for me to be okay in my own skin. Mm-hmm. I'm emotionally dependent on my idea of what you should be. Those are unenforceable rules. You can't enforce them. Emotional sobriety is regardless of your behavior or what you think, say, or feel. I don't lose my emotional balance. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean it doesn't make me angry. It doesn't mean it isn't painful, but it means I don't fall off my emotional center. Mm-hmm. What an amazing insight, to finally get that, because Donna, that was the reason I drank and used. Mm-hmm. Because you didn't act like I wanted you to.
Right.
And so when you didn't act, I didn't punish you. I punished me.
Right. Yeah. I looked at you side-eyed. What did that mean?
So I'm going to go hurt myself now.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. And so this emotional sobriety thing, it's everything. It really, really is.
Yeah.
And now today, people say, well, that hurt. Well, yeah, it's okay. That hurt. We get it. But it didn't knock you off.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, you're getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the parents, it's like, but I had hopes. I mean, I wanted my child to go to college. I wanted them to do this, and I wanted them to do that, and I have all these plans. I said, but they're your plans, not his.
Oh, right.
So when you can let go of that and allow your child to live their life the way they want, whether they continue active in their addiction or not, we have a choice to be in our children's lives, even though they may be emotionally, physically unhealthy.
Right.
How do we figure out a way to be in their lives with boundaries, healthy boundaries, but we can still have some sort of a relationship?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
Because I think that's important. One of the things I always say is our children in active addiction, or anybody in active addiction, needs to be loved more, not less. We meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and sometimes loving them more is interpreted as loving them less by them. But we need to be emotionally sober so we understand the difference, whether they do or not.
And sometimes we have to love from a distance.
Yes,
and
we do.
Sometimes we have to love enough to let that person go.
Yeah.
And that's heart-wrenching.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting with the onslaught of the fentanyl issue now. It's not grandpa's drugs anymore. You know what I mean?
Serious stuff.
We've gone from DUIs and an occasional heroin overdose in the 60s to a whole other animal.
Mm-hmm.
The cannabis is different.
Yep.
It's no joke. And
mm-hmm.
it's not, and even people that have built up a tolerance to using fentanyl, they get cocky and they take a pill that is not the same one they took before, and they're not waking up the next day.
Yeah.
And this is happening. It's epidemic. And, to say, well, you made the choice to take that pill, you made the choice to smoke that thing or whatever. Like there's nobody other than a sociopath, and then they're not responsible anyway, but there's nobody that wakes up and says, this is how I want to end up. Nobody makes that choice. Nobody says, today I want to alienate everybody in my life and I want to hurt and break the hearts of everybody that I know. Nobody says that.
That's right.
Come on,
Mm-hmm.
So what else? What's going on? We got to stop blaming and start, working in the solution with each other. Drop your opinions about this or that. It's like I've carried Narcan in my glove box before. We live right down. In fact, the studio is right down the street from a homeless shelter and the sheriff department. Stuff like that. So any given day you could drive by and somebody's laying on the street, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody can say, well, they put themselves there. I don't think you should be carrying Narcan. Listen, let's save their life. Let's talk about the moral issue later. Let's save their life now.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things is giving them fentanyl strips so they can test before they ingest, whatever. So if they know there's fentanyl, maybe take a little bit less.
Yeah. And the jury's still out
on reduction
with me. I get that. I really do. I used to be, adamant, no medical assisted treatment and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, not so much. Because I'm really good friends with a international interventionist, Matt Brown, and Ken Seeley from Intervention, the A&E's Intervention, and those guys. I've kind of changed my tune. I'm like, let's keep them alive so we can talk about these things while they're alive. So needle exchange, the way it's done sometimes, I think we could do a whole lot better. But we had this thing in Oregon where they passed a law where they're writing tickets, right? So you get the first tick, you get caught with, $20 worth of meth, for instance, or fentanyl or something, you're going to get a choice. You either get $100 ticket or you go to treatment. Okay. So, most of them say, well, I'll go to treatment. Well, do they show up for treatment? Of course not. They're unrecovered. They're in their acts of addiction. They're not showing up for treatment. They're going to lie to you and say they are.
Right.
Okay, so they don't show up for treatment. So the second time they get caught, right, you don't have a choice, $100 of treatment. You're going to treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You just are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody's enforcing that, though. And so you have hundreds of tickets being written, but nobody's showing up for treatment.
And they're probably not paying them either.
No, and they're not paying them.
Right.
So it's good on paper. The idea is good on paper, but it needs a lot of work.
Yeah.
It needs a lot of work. And, I think I hate to say this to my fellow 12-steppers, but we need to get off our blessed assurance and step up to the plate, because the work happens on the street with those homeless shelters, with those people, one-on-one. Get them to a meeting, get them to a support group, get them to a picnic, start talking to them, rub shoulders with them. I don't care if they smell, it doesn't matter. They are a human being. We got to start getting personal with these people. And not if you're brand new, don't go running out there trying to save the world, but get a group of people together and start taking the message. We used to do that, Donna. We used to go to the treatment center, AA and NA used to go to the treatment centers. Treatment centers didn't come to them. Mm-hmm. We're loading up buses and going to the local AA or NA meeting. We were going to them.
Right.
We don't do it anymore.
That was called a commitment, right?
Yes, a service commitment. Whatever happened to that? We can't expect the non-addicted, those who do not understand and have never been where we've been or don't have family members, because for every person that could say, yeah, I got a family member, a loved one who's got a problem, we've got a whole bunch that don't. We forget about those guys. We can't expect them to do this work. We got to do this work.
Right.
So if you're going to a 12-step meeting and you've been going by yourself for years, get off your butt and go pick somebody up from the homeless center downtown and take them to a meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not if you're a guy, don't pick up one of the girls.
No.
Come on now.
That's 13 stepping, right?
That's right. But grab another 12-step member that's healthy and go down and invite somebody to a meeting. And let's get this ball rolling.
Yeah. Well, we have a recovery community centers throughout the state of New Hampshire. And a lot of them do outreach, and they go to the homeless camps, and they bring food, they bring Narcan, they do needle exchange. They will help them if they're interested and go to a meeting, because you don't have to necessarily be sober, but you have to have the desire, correct?
Sure.
To show up at a meeting. And so the centers have all kinds of programming, but they're really making a difference, because it's all about connection.
It's
all about connection, right? And bringing that to the people. Yeah. So one of the things I want to ask you, because we're getting near the end here, for someone struggling with addiction and considering recovery, what advice or encouragement would you offer them?
That it has never been in recovery. They're looking for help.
They're struggling, and they just don't know what to do, where to go.
Yeah, sure. Well, the easy answer to that is call your local AA or NA hotline. The hard response to that is, well, I don't have a phone, and I don't, I'm on the street. Or if they're listening to this, they may have a tablet. Who knows? So what I tell people is, look, I don't know how you got your bicycle on that little cart that you're pulling around with you, but you got it from interacting with somebody. Mm-hmm. You need to do that. If you're at a homeless shelter, you need to pick up a pamphlet, talk to leadership there and get yourself in somewhere where there's other people that are like-minded that also want help. Right. That's where it starts. You've got to reach out. obviously, if the person isn't physically capable of doing that, they're probably not listening to this broadcast. But you got to pick up the phone. You just got to pick up the phone. Listen, and then for those of you who have gone to a meeting, again, I've given my phone number out probably thousands of times. I've only got one phone call.
Wow.
Right? In the 26 years that I've been sober, I've got one phone call. Now, I've had people, ask me to be their sponsor at the meetings, things like that. But as far as phone calls, that's crazy. So if you got that phone list, use it. We put our numbers on there because we mean business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're putting your number on there and you don't mean business, don't you dare put your number on there. So there's that. There are, believe it or not, there are residential recovery programs that actually don't cost you anything. And they say they do in the beginning. That's a little secret, right? But if you're serious about it, Salvation Army has programs like that, Victory Outreach, Adult and Teen Challenge, that's a biggie. If you sit down with them and you really mean business and you're willing to do what they tell you to do, you can get well. You can recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body and stay clean and sober.
Yep.
So reach out to them. We do on our website, we have an amazing recovery resource page with hundreds of resources. And you just visit take12radio.com and click on recovery resources, and there's just a ton of them.
Awesome. That's
Faith,
great.
secular, there's all sorts of smart recovery, the whole 9 yards. So people can go there too.
So I'll tell you a little funny story. Well, maybe you won't think it's funny, but my son, I kept saying, you have to get a sponsor. I didn't know what a sponsor was. You have to get a sponsor. You have to do, 90 meetings, 90 days. Those are the things you have to do every time he'd come home for treatment. I was a pain in his neck. And so in his sobriety, he said, Mom, I always said, I need a sponsor. And I said, yeah. He goes, I feel like I'm asking these guys to be my Valentine because I'm really uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
But eventually he did. He got a sponsor and moved through and started to do it. And then he became a sponsor for many.
Nice.
Yeah.
So can I say this for somebody that might be listening that's never done that, but you're curious about it? My recommendation, if you're looking for a sponsor, right, don't just pick somebody you like the way they deliver their share. Find somebody that has had a spiritual awakening as a result of working those steps.
Mm-hmm.
Don't find somebody that's on step 3. Right? Because you're gonna pass them up. Find somebody that's had a spiritual awakening as a result of those steps, and go ask them if they would be willing to take you through that step process. If you're somebody who sponsors people and you haven't been making the approach to the newcomer, shame on you. Go make the approach to the newcomer. Because you know what, Donna? The people that I've seen go back out are people that stopped working with people. They stopped doing it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they use again.
Mm-hmm. What message or insight do you hope our listeners will take away from our conversation today?
That there's hope regardless of how dark things seem. That the word seem is a big word and it's deceptive. Things only seem hopeless. Things only appear hopeless. As long as you're sucking air, there's hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't give in to the lie that there's no hope, because that's a lie from the pits of hell.
And sometimes, I know for me, there were days it was just one breath at a time. I couldn't even get past that. Sometimes I think, I'm in recovery from being the unhealthy helper. We all have to work a program somehow. Mine was, I started with Metal EBD, Codependence Anonymous. And then I found a Codependence Anonymous meeting and I loved it.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just putting that one foot in front of the other, and it's baby steps.
Absolutely.
To get there and just getting that will to get out of bed and just make an effort, because no matter what, everybody's worth it.
Everybody's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody's worth it. There's no grandchildren in God's world. You're all his kids.
Mm-hmm.
You're all his kids. And you're worth every good thing that the Creator has for you. Start your journey today.
Yeah. So one more time, how do people get in touch with you, Monty?
Sure. You can visit our website at Take 12 Radio. You can spell it out, take12radio.com, or TAKE, the number 12, radio.com. You can subscribe for fun and for free on any of the podcasting platforms listed there. If you want to get a hold of me, you can send me an email at take12radio@comcast.net or Monty Meyer at comcast.net. That's how you do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you and all the work that you're doing.
You too, Donna. Keep up the great work. You're doing great.
Thank you.
All right. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at Donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.